Thanks for coming. My name's Peter Massini and I'm chairing this session on natural capital. I work for the Greater London Authority and I lead on green infrastructure issues at the Greater London Authority. And the session this afternoon is discussing the concept of natural capital. And it's one of those issues which raises a number of emotions. Some people immediately think that when we talk about natural capital, we're talking about putting an economic monetized value on nature. That's part of the story, but it's not the whole story. It's about trying to identify some additional values which we can use in our armory to promote nature-based services and ecosystem services. So we're all used to expressing the value of the natural environment in terms of emotional, spiritual value. But there are also ways in which you can actually identify the economic value of green infrastructure and natural environment. And our three speakers this afternoon will be taking us through some of those ideas and concepts. So we've got those very powerful, compelling arguments for those people who don't necessarily immediately appreciate the ethical and moral values of nature. So it's a really important area of work, something that we're doing a lot of work on in London, because in London, when we're talking about protecting, conserving and enhancing the natural environment, we're up against a huge number of other economic drivers. So we have to actually articulate the work we do in terms of economics, as well as the moral and ethical argument for conserving nature and improving green infrastructure. So the first speaker is Oliver Holzinger from Birmingham University, and he's going to tell us about the natural capital accounting tool, natural capital planning tool. And Oliver's a freelance consultant in environmental economics, and a PhD researcher investigating the issues around natural capital planning. So, Oliver, over to you. Thank you very much.
Yes, Peter already introduced. I'm doing a PhD. I'm also a research fellow in that position. I'm developing this tool and testing this tool. And first, I want to give a brief introduction to the whole concept, so that we're all on the same page. And natural capital can be defined as the world's stock of natural assets, including geology, soil, air, water, and all living things. It is from this natural capital that humans derive a wide range of services, often called ecosystem services, which you will have heard about, and which make human life possible. So it's important that natural capital is a stock, and from that stock of natural capital, if managed sustainably, then there will be a sustainable flow of ecosystem services, everything we gather from nature, everything we benefit from nature in terms of health benefits, etc., and that benefits us as humans. The problem is, if that natural capital base and stock declines, we can't expect the same flow of ecosystem services coming from that stock. So it will decline as well, and in the end affect our human well-being in deteriorating it. So we have to reinvest and take care of our natural capital base and resources so that we can secure a sustainable flow of ecosystem services. The Natural Capital Committee in 2015 came up with the so-called 25-year Natural Capital Plan. And we see that in the past, the value of natural capital has steadily declined. And we are at a point where if we don't intervene properly in a business as usual scenario, it will further decline. And that will inevitably negatively affect our human well-being. And now we are at a state and a point of time where it's not just enough to just protect what we have, we also have to enhance our natural capital resource to get towards the initial value of that stock again. So the State of Natural Capital report also states that given that over 80% of England's population now live in urban areas, the quantity and quality of green infrastructure is of critical importance. It is not just an issue of well-being and economic benefits, but also of equity and distribution. So we know, for example, that more deprived communities also often have less access to high-quality green space, and that further disadvantages them, for example, in terms of health effects. We also know that investment in green infrastructure is often the first to be sacrificed. during periods of financial pressure, but that's a false economy. It's very short-term thinking. If we don't invest now, we will have the problems later, and we will put, for example, additional pressures on the NHS if we don't provide the healthy green spaces now, the healthy green infrastructure, and allow our population to be active in the green and also benefiting from the positive effects on mental health, for example. And green infrastructure needs to be fully incorporated into urban planning systems to help avoid short-termism. And building green infrastructure into long-term development plans will not only ensure its benefits from the outset, but will also avoid costly retrofitting in the future. So it's really important to invest now. We can save a lot of costs in the future. Natural Environment white paper published by HM government also acknowledges that the government expects the planning system to deliver the homes, business, infrastructure and thriving local places that the country needs, while protecting and enhancing the natural and local historic environment. And planning has a key role in securing a sustainable future. However, the current system is failing to achieve the kind of integrated and informed decision-making that is needed to support sustainable land use. This has been picked up by the National Planning Policy Framework, published shortly afterwards, at least acknowledging that the planning system should contribute to enhance the natural and local environment by recognizing the wider benefits of ecosystem services. So it's not, again, not only about protection, it's about enhancement. The question is only, but how? How do we do that? How do we implement that? If I'm a planner, a designer, or a developer, how do I implement this high-level policy? And that's really where we jumped in, and we, based on this call, we developed the natural capital planning tool to make it possible to fairly easily implement this demand for planning. So the purpose of the natural capital planning tool is really to better assess and manage the long-term impact of proposed developments and plans on the delivery of ecosystem services. And the tool is designed to give planners and developers a simple and straightforward Excel tool to hand, which does not necessarily require specific expertise, because often this expertise is not available in-house. So we kind of outsourced this expertise and implemented directly into the tool by engaging many experts to do the assessment for them, for the tool user. And aim is really to move away from a thick box exercise to an integrated and informed decision-making with the main aim to ensure that new developments and plans have an overall net positive impact on the provision of ecosystem services. And we believe that this will be a requirement when implementing the 25-year Natural Capital Plan, which has now been adopted by DEFRA, and there will be a policy document being published soon. Coincidentally, our tool also assesses the impact on ecosystem services over a time scale of 25 years post-development. At the time when we started to develop it, we didn't know about that plan. It was not, there was no mentioning of it, but coincidentally it fits quite well the time scale of the 25-year Natural Capital Plan as well. And the tool can be applied at different scales of the planning system, from a master plan, a site selection stage, down to a plot scale. And it can assess the impact on 10 different ecosystem services. Harvested products, which is basically everything we physically gather from nature, biodiversity, aesthetics, recreation, water, flood and air quality regulation, local climate regulation, that is referring to the urban heat island effect and to mitigate the heating up of city centers. Global climate regulation, it's referring to the sequestration and storage of carbon, and soil contamination as well, because it's often an issue in a planning context. And how does the tool work? So we used a multi-criteria decision analysis framework, so it's not based on a monetary valuation. The reason for that is that the evidence to express the value of nature and ecosystem services in monetary terms reveals many gaps. And for this kind of comparative assessment, we want to avoid these gaps, so we base it on a scoring system from, let's say, -10 to 10 points and scores, not monetary evaluation. And we identified a set of relevant and readily available, that's very important, indicators. And they have been identified by a stakeholder group we established at the beginning of the project. And for each assessed ecosystem service, an expert task group was established with the main aim to translate the indicators into impact scores. So at the moment, we don't really have the evidence, for example, mapped about the value of ecosystem services. So we have translate all the evidence into a metric that is useful for this context. This is a framework. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize that. Here we see the ecosystem services assessed, and here the input level indicators, as we call them. So that is basically what the tool user enters into the tool. And the guidance is provided in the tool, so all the data is easily and freely accessible. And here just an example for biodiversity. So the biodiversity score depends on the land use change. So each land use has a specific score, and then the difference from one land use to another will define the biodiversity score. And it also depends on the importance within the ecological network. So biodiversity values commonly increase if they're well connected to other high quality habitats. And these two indicators make then up the biodiversity score. And one feature of the tool that should be recognized is that habitat maturity has been explicitly recognized. So a mature woodland patch, for example, receives a higher biodiversity score than a newly created one. This is just to prompt developers and plan makers to really protect the really nice bits of a development site instead of paving everything and then rebuilding everything. And this is how it works. So first, the tool user enters some indicators. Here we have the different land use changes and some other indicators as well. It's all explained in the tool. Then the tool will automatically calculate an impact score for each ecosystem service, so indicating the direction of change, in this fictive example positive, and also the magnitude of the impact. But because the tool can't incorporate each and every possible circumstance, it also allows the tool user to adjust scores. So here we have the average scores, which are defined by the expert groups. But if I don't agree with these scores, then I have the opportunity to adjust them. The tool will then highlight adjustments, so to be transparent about any changes made, and also prompt the tool user to give a justification for any changes, so that we can't just play around with the tool as long as possible until we have the intended outcomes. So it's basically to prevent that. And then the tool will summarize all the different impacts. So we have the different ecosystem services that are assessed, and for each service a score. The unadjusted score also stated for reference. And then the tool comes up with a final development impact score. Obviously, it's a political decision which kind of scores I want to feature. For example, as a decision maker in the planning department, I may decide that we don't allow a negative score on biodiversity, but let's just assume that the overall aim is to have a general overall positive development impact score. Then from that perspective, assuming that all other requirements of a developmental plan are also met, you can proceed with the development. And if you assume that the outcome is negative, then the tool will also give you some examples and point to some references how to improve specific scores. So for example, if you have a negative score on biodiversity, to stay with the example, then it will refer, for example, to the Lawton review to improve the kind of design and the kind of connectivity that is necessary to have a high biodiversity score and generate high biodiversity values. Then you can redesign your plan or development design and rerun the tool basically, and hopefully in the end we have a positive outcome. So this tool, we've been developing this for the last 3 or so years. And recently, well, not that recently anymore actually, but in April 2016, we received some additional funding from NERC. And the aim is really, because the tool is available in a test state, now the aim is really to implement it in a wider planning context and to further test and refine it. So the project aim of this specific 2-year project period is to instigate a step change in the appreciation and incorporation of green-blue infrastructure value and benefits within English planning policy using the analytic lens of natural capital and ecosystem services. So this is our project team. You see we have several case study partners, and we test the tool with each case study partner, always hoping to make an impact on the different plans they have. And yeah, we review the planning system, we test and refine the tool together with the case study partners. Here you can see we want to cover as much as possible of the spectrum from rural to urban green-blue infrastructure settings, and also along different stages of the planning or development stage. So it is basically for us to figure out where the tool works well and where it may not work so well, and which kind of applications are there for the tool in the future. And it's also, we want to fully engage with case study partners, really make an impact on the ground. So it's not a purely academic exercise. And we also want to engage with the wider planning and developer community through our links with the Business Council for Sustainable Development and other partners who will help to facilitate and really mainstream this kind of thinking in this tool. And we think that the tool can be a link between the Natural Environment White Paper, driven by DEFRA, and the National Planning Policy Framework to deliver the 25-year Natural Capital Plan. It's obviously only one tool of many and only one measure of many measures, but we hope that it will really help to deliver the 25-year Natural Capital Plan. Thank you very much. Probably.
Thanks, Oliver. Quite a lot to take in there, but I think what Oliver's demonstrating is that if we actually want to really embed green infrastructure, natural capital into thinking around development and urban development in particular, we do need to think about some very crunchy tools and metrics, because they're the things that actually help you build your business case. There's a strong emotional argument for what we do, but we need some very strong economic and business case arguments, and things like the natural capital planning tool help in that decision-making process. There'll be time for some questions afterwards, but I think most of the speakers will be hanging around in the afternoon as well, so if you want to talk to them individually, then please do. Next up is Kenton Rogers from Treeconomics. Kent has been working with us in London on producing an iTree report for London to actually identify the value of London's urban forest. And Kent's been doing this kind of work all across the country and internationally as well. And Treeconomics is our social enterprise that engages with public bodies, research organisations, community and commercial businesses to highlight the value of trees. And if you want to know about that kind of stuff, then Kenton's your man. Kenton.
Thank you for having me. It's really good to be here. And yeah, I'm an urban forester by trade, and that's all about working with trees and people. And that's been a very interesting journey for me personally, because I originally got into forestry to get away from people, and that's difficult. So here I am today, but it's been a good journey. And one of the first things I want to talk about is the urban forest, because to some people that's an oxymoron. How can an area be both urban and how can it be forest? Well, actually, if you look at some of the cities in the States, like Annapolis or Milwaukee, they've got kind of around 40% tree cover over there, which is way above the averages for the UK, and also a little bit above the averages for Europe as well. And trees in the urban environment are really important because that's where most of us live, so it's where they have the biggest effect, it's where they give us most benefit and where they have most value. And as a species, we haven't been urbanised very long, and so our trees and cities are actually, towns and cities are actually quite stressful places for us, and trees help mitigate for that in a whole variety of ways. But in order to achieve that, we do need that canopy cover. This slide here shows the average canopy cover for towns. I know it's expressed regionally, but this is from the Trees in Towns 2 survey that was carried out in 2005, and you can see our canopy cover averages are actually a bit below those that are experienced in Europe and in the States. I'm going to go on to say London is actually a bit of an exception. And one of the reasons for that is because it got so bad in the past. This is a painting by Henry Lloyd, and it's looking from Southwark Bridge towards St Paul's Cathedral. And there's a couple of things that I notice straight away about this picture. The first is the smog, so there's a lot of air pollution. And the second is there's only one tree in this picture. And that was only there for hanging people from. So, bit of a, yeah, it's arguable whether that's an ecosystem service. So, the Victorians recognised that actually something needed to be done, and the Edwardians as well, and they embarked upon quite a large tree planting scheme in London at that time, and London's benefiting from that legacy now. So the canopy cover figures for London are around 21-22%. Peter will correct me if I'm wrong. There's been different studies carried out that have found slightly different results, but it's in that ballpark of 20%. The Victorians knew that this was a good thing. Trees improved air quality by raking that air pollution from the air. They capture it on the fine hairs on the underside of the leaves, they capture it on the bark, and that stops it getting into our lungs. And as part of that iTree eco study that Peter mentioned, we're able to measure that, which obviously the Victorians didn't have the luxury of. We could break that down tree species by tree species, but here we're looking at the pollutants month by month and broken down pollutant by pollutant. Now, because it's been raked out of the atmosphere, that then doesn't go on to damage us as people or buildings, and that's a service worth £126 million every single year, because if the trees weren't taking it out of the system, we'd end up in hospital, buildings would need repairing, and that's using the UK social damage cost, which is a recognised UK government figure for air pollution. So we're going to rattle through some of the other tree benefits as well, because the great thing about trees is they do all these benefits all at the same time and at very little cost. And you won't be able to read all of those, but I'll go through some of them now, and we won't be able to cover them all. So, air temperature regulation. So this is some work we did in London, Victoria with Forest Research. A lot of our work is collaborative, big projects. No one's got the entire skill set. And so in this work, they found that the trees around London, Victoria Business Improvement District, those particularly in the backyard of Buckingham Palace, were reducing peak summer temperatures by 7 degrees centigrade, which is quite a staggering amount. Also, that effect could be felt up to a kilometre away, but then though that reduction in temperature was a lot less, around a degree or under. But it's still a significant thing. In the recent heat wave incidents in Paris in the early 2000s, you know, that contributed to quite a few deaths directly related to that. More locally, trees have been shown to increase the life of asphalt by around 15%, and also the way that trees can cool the air also can contribute to energy saving effects on buildings. Now, they're a lot more advanced in the US with this kind of research, but we did make a start on this work with the London project. So if you have trees around a building, you can reduce your air conditioning costs in the summer through the trees cooling the building, and also in the winter you can reduce heating costs. But the trick is to get the trees in the right place. And so these are the figures we have for London. The actual benefit is quite small overall, but it is a benefit, and that's because trees can be a disbenefit too if they're planted in the wrong place. You need to put the right tree in the right place. So when we look at buildings, it's really important to think about which aspect the tree's put on, which species of tree you use. Because if you put it in the wrong place, you could increase your heating bills and you could increase your air conditioning bills. Apologies for the quality of that. Shoppers in high streets, you'll often hear shopkeepers complaining about that trees can sometimes, you know, mask their hoardings so that people don't know what shop they're going into. Well, actually, the research shows that shoppers spend longer in leafier high streets. There's anecdotal evidence to suggest that the effects of the recession have been worse in high streets with less tree cover. Shoppers are willing to spend 9% to 12% more for goods in leafier high streets, the research shows. And I'll give a link to where all this research is at the end of the talk. We did some work with in High Wycombe, and this is around property values. So another thing trees can do is increase property values, and what this is showing is a relationship, not a causation. So these benefits, some we can measure quite accurately, some we've got a bit more work to do, with others, of course, internationally doing that work to drill down into the figures. But it's still quite a stark difference between property values realised with areas less than 25% tree cover and in the areas where there's 25% more tree cover. Again, London, Victoria, good quality green space, you can get higher ground rents. That means you get bigger businesses in. That means they will they employ higher paid earners who spend more money in your local towns and shops. Plus, if they've got access to that green space, they're less stressed and they're more productive. It's quite an old study now done by Roger Ulrich in 1984, but he demonstrated that should you be unlucky enough to end up in hospital, a view of trees and green space from your hospital bed can increase your recovery times. I don't know if there's anything in this, but these guys did not have the benefit of such a view, and they were in hospital from 1979 right up until 1982. Taking that concept one step further, in Toronto, they mapped their entire tree canopy cover, and they overlaid that with all their health data to see what the results might be. Apologies for this slide, you don't have to read it all. I'll summarise. 10 more trees in a city block were roughly equivalent to living 7 years longer. And what's interesting about this study, again, it's a relationship, not a causation, but just increasing that to 11 trees per city block actually doubled that effect. So it was equivalent to be living 14 years longer or having an annual income of around $20,000. Trees have also been shown to reduce crime, which is contrary to popular belief. I know there is a perception that trees can increase crime in poorly managed green space areas. But actually, in this study, a 12% increase, a 10% increase in trees roughly equated to a 12% decrease in crime. And that represents a saving to police departments and things like that. And it's really quite a striking relationship. But there is a catch here, and that's about properly maintaining your trees. So in Torbay, we're able to look at all the costs associated with trees, the planting costs, the salaries for the tree officers, the leaf clearance, the installation costs, the end-of-life removal costs, and all the stuff in between. But we could only really value, in monetary terms, around two of the benefits at that time: the air pollution removal and the carbon sequestration. Now, if you look at CICES, which is the International Classification for Ecosystem Services, there are around 30 that can relate to trees and woodlands, around 15 that are also relevant to the urban area, around 7 that we can quantify the effect, as in the drop in summer temperatures or the tonnage of air pollution removed, and there's only about 3 or 4 we can monetize. So with that in mind, we took all those figures together, and for every £1 spent on this rather sorry looking cherry tree in a grass verge, it only returned 1 pence back in benefits. That's not a good investment. Another point, actually, is one of my bugbears is, a lot of money's been invested in planting this tree, and then actually they've paid contractors to go out and kill it. They're paying them to do this. It's insanity. However, at the other end of the spectrum, and for this study we looked at a few different trees. This is the worst and the best. And we worked with the economist at Natural England, Tim Sunderland. For every £1 spent on that oak tree there, it's got more space, admittedly, but it's got a fuller crown. For every £1 spent on that tree, it's returning £4.96 in benefits. And that's just looking at the air pollution removal and the carbon sequestration. So the key is really to look after your trees and increase that canopy cover, because we don't really want to settle, I don't think, for sort of 10 or 15%. It would be really good to get up to 30, 40% canopy cover to really actualise and realise those benefits and values that trees are providing. So thank you very much for your time. If you want to get information on getting trees into hard landscapes, then I suggest you look at the work of TDAG, the Trees Design Action Group. They've got two excellent documents at the moment: Trees in the Townscape, which is top-down, looking at trees and how to integrate them into our towns and cities. And also Trees in Hard Landscapes, which is more bottom-up, the nitty-gritty, how to get the tree into those hard spaces, because it is possible, but it takes a bit more time and effort, but it's worth it if we look at trees in the long run. All the research I've been talking about, international, has been collated by Dr. Kathleen Wolfe, and this is her website here, where it's all been put together very nicely under different themes. That's me done. Thank you very much for your time.
I mentioned that Kenton did some work for us in London on the IT report for London, and that's been a game changer in helping me to understand the value of the urban forest. We work quite often with business improvement districts who are set up to improve the public realm and the economic activity within certain districts of London. These are business people. They like trees, they're human beings like you and I, but actually they like trees even more now when they realise the economic benefits those trees provide within their business districts, and are willing to provide extra funding to local authorities to maintain those trees and other green infrastructure at a very high quality. So this economic argument, the business case for infrastructure, is actually a very powerful and compelling issue that we're trying to embed into thinking around green infrastructure and policy making in London. Our final speaker is Claire from Mersey Forest. The Mersey Forest are an organisation working in Manchester and Liverpool around improving and embedding green infrastructure into the urban core of those two cities. Done some fantastic work over the few years, again trying to make the economic case for green infrastructure in the urban environment.
Green infrastructure. That's not new. I've been teaching that for 30 years. I've been teaching ecosystem services for my students. So said a very cross elderly professor about 10 years ago. So what I want to talk to you today is about 3 case studies where we have worked with businesses to deliver the business case. And I'm going to talk in the language that businesses understand. And I think it's very useful to use the term natural capital and green infrastructure planning. So who are we? I'm from the Mersey Forest. We're based in North Cheshire and Merseyside, and we've been established since 1991. So we cover 525 square miles with 1.7 million people. We were set up as a regeneration organisation, and our plan is embedded within the NPPF, so it does have teeth. It is a material consideration, and so therefore we're able to then translate that down into local plans and into practice, working with our local authority partners. So our strapline is more from trees. So you're getting the idea of an ecosystem service approach. But we do it in language that people can understand. And as Kenton and Oliver said originally, where people live, the urban areas, are where the benefits are felt most. And interestingly enough, when I first came across the Mersey Forest, I was working in private sector for the first 12 years of my career. The urban areas, such as the centre of Liverpool and the cities, were excluded from community forests. That soon was rectified. And so we worked together in areas of high, dense population. So this is the first of my case studies. It's Wirral Waters, so that's just across the water, the River Mersey from Liverpool. You can see there. So for those of you who are not from north of Watford, just a bit of an illustration. So this is the Wirral, Liverpool on the other side. The population in Birkenhead and around grew very rapidly in the 1800s. It grew tenfold. So we went from a population of just over 1,000 to 110,000 in 100 years. And I don't know if you know, but the first public park for health benefits was Birkenhead Park because of the dire health of the population around Birkenhead. It's famous for shipbuilding. We had a great industry of shipbuilding, and then it dropped considerably, and it's on the rise again. So Camel Laird will probably be familiar to many of you. This is some mapping that we did, green infrastructure mapping, and all the areas that are green and red show green infrastructure. The red is the urban areas, the private gardens. So we in our mapping of green infrastructure, we include private gardens as a really important component of green infrastructure, which is absolutely critical when we're working in urban areas. So I want to draw your attention to this arrow on the map here. There is a 14-year life expectancy difference between this side of the arrow and that side of the arrow. 14 years. That's about a kilometre a year. So the area on the right has very, very poor health statistics. The area on the left is where the Liverpool footballers used to live. So with the decline of the shipbuilding industry, one of Britain's largest developers, Peel, was interested and has started to develop the area around the old docks, the old quays. And this isn't an instant job. This is one of Britain's biggest regeneration projects, and it's going on for the next 30 years with the intention of creating 20,000 new jobs, 14,000 new homes. And this is just part of a wider regeneration of the area. Peel is not a small organisation. If you're from the north of England, you will know how important Peel is as a landowner. They own huge tracts of land, including the Manchester Ship Canal. They used to own the Trafford Centre, John Lennon Airport, massive areas of land, as well as areas with wind farms on. They're a really, really big business. They are not a soft, cuddly organisation. They need to have the facts, and then they take note of the facts and they act. So the whole area that we were working in really had a need for regeneration. You can see just some of the photographs here. So the usual areas that we tend to concentrate in, areas of high unemployment, lots of derelict land, and an ageing population. So we started work on this particular project with Peel a few years ago now, and we are a community forest. Without the community, we don't exist. And so we spent a lot of our time talking to members of the community about how we can deliver green infrastructure interventions in their locality. We don't necessarily talk to members of the public about green infrastructure. We might brand it as that, but we talk to them about things that they really understand. We talk to them about street trees, about verges, about new parks, about managing what existing green infrastructure, natural capital there is. And as a result of the programme, which went on for a number of years, we managed to bring in considerable investment working with Peel. So we brought in £2.7 million from Regional Development Agency funding. We used Section 106 funding, local sustainable transport funds, European funding. So we had a package of funding measures that we brought together to deliver just over 1,200 new street trees, developed a brand new park, improving what was originally a derelict piece of land. The pub next door was known as the Bloodbath. It wasn't a particularly easy area to work in, but through the work with the landowner, with the local authority, and particularly with the community, there's been very, very little amount of vandalism to the trees that were put in. And this is something that has a very large economic cost, as people will know, but something that we work with the community to try and avoid, for them to have complete ownership of it. And a big part of it was around improving access to jobs. So we had over 22 kilometres of roads improved. It's all very well me saying about this, but what did the businesses feel? Well, unsurprisingly, I should say, they were delighted. And 85% of them had said that they'd seen a direct improvement in their area. Rates of cycling to work increased, rates of walking to work increased too. I'm going to move down into Cheshire a bit, and this is, people might have heard of Cheshire. I think it's a very nice, attractive landscape. There's a bit of a story behind it. So we have Northwich. It's got 20,000 residents in a town. And we work very closely with the business improvement district. So it's already been mentioned before by Kenton and also by Peter about business improvement districts. And my next case study is about how we sold the concept of improving the green infrastructure in their town to the business improvement district. A lot of Northwich is made up of green, but also a lot of blue infrastructure. And it looks lovely there, really nice. But it does suffer very much from flooding. It's at the confluence of two rivers, the River Dane and the River Weaver, and the town centre floods very, very frequently. So next to the town of Northwich is the largest area of publicly accessible green space, we think, near any town in England. It's 1,000 acres of just literally on the doorstep of the town. And the reason it's there is because of this. So underneath Northwich, huge deposits of salt. And in the 19th century, the landowners and the salt industry became very greedy. And they started to use brine to extract. They started to flush the area with water to extract the salt because it has a really good commercial value. But as they flushed the area underneath with salt, the land sunk. And it didn't sink all over, it sank in areas. So for many, many years, the area of Northwich was not able to be invested in. So the town started to decline. Along came the chemical industry, huge amounts of chemical waste, that went onto the land. So as a result of the chemical industry and the salt industry, it was a large area of land that could not be built upon. But as over time being developed from a big area of derelict land into a fantastic asset to the town of Northwich. And you can see here a road, there's photographs of the town where suddenly the shops just disappear into the ground. They're all built on timber frames so they can be jacked up. There's some really interesting photographs, but it does illustrate this instability of the land, and it wasn't suitable for further investment. There has been some stabilisation process undertaken, and so the town is now on its up again. There's a lot of new investment. So there was a business improvement district created. So I don't know if you're aware of how it works, but there's a levy that's charged on the rateable value so that the businesses, first of all, have to agree to become a business improvement district. And then the money that's raised through this levy goes to deliver projects in the town centre. And one of the projects that was put forward in the prospectus to the businesses was about undertaking a green infrastructure audit of the town. And I think they'd been inspired by what has gone on with the Victoria bid. So that's what we did, and we had to sell it to them. And it was really interesting hearing about shopkeepers loving street trees, We had a real problem with Northwich because they really didn't like street trees, because every month they have a farmer's market. And where are they going to put the tents if there's trees in the way? So we had some really good, interesting discussions with the shopkeepers. The lady who's the chair of the bid has her own shop, she sells curtains. So we were talking directly to the people, and they didn't want, when they put their bid together, it's all about attracting places to invest. It was about increased footfall, increased spend, reduced costs. So we had to work with the businesses to put it into a language that they would understand. And this is the green infrastructure plan that we did for the bid, and some of the interventions are in there. And the top area is Northwich Woodlands, which, as I said, and it was about how we connected the town centre to the woodlands and vice versa. And there you can see an illustration of it there. Finally, this is the most up-to-date and hot off the press story. So this is Liverpool, working with 2 business improvement districts in Liverpool. We did some GI mapping and looked at the green infrastructure within 2 of the business improvement districts. The city centre business improvement district, which is this area here, no green infrastructure. The commercial district had 4%, so very, very low levels of it. What we're looking to do is to link up the surrounding areas of green infrastructure and to create new green infrastructure. So we've worked to create, with the bid, to create an action plan, and with that has come the support of the businesses within the business improvement district, and that's been absolutely critical. So we're not talking about a small Cheshire town, we're talking about a bid that has 1,500 businesses, but has 100,000 employees and is next to 40,000 houses, so residents. So we've got a really important job that we can be doing. And the good thing is, not only have we now got a plan, we've got the finance to work with the bid to help to deliver it. So we heard a couple of months ago that as a result of a European Horizon 2020 bid that was submitted last year, we've got £3.4 million to work with the bid to deliver green infrastructure interventions right in the heart of Liverpool city centre. So in terms of the language, natural capital, green infrastructure planning, it has been absolutely critical for us to start to talk with businesses, to persuade them to work with us to put the money where the heart is. So I've got lots of more information. If you want to find any more, come and see me afterwards. But thank you.